All right, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in with Thom. And we've got. Can I call you an old friend, Eliot?
Yes, I think that's safe to say. We've known each
Yeah,
other a long time now.
yeah. It's been a while. It's been like man, it's been
Yeah,
like nine years. But
yeah.
I love following your career. And there was a recent announcement on your social media that you had left the confines. I don't know if I
Mm.
just used the term confines, but you left you left
The-
Daryl and John's band. So, and I know you've been out more recently with Daryl's band, and I think your original association was with Daryl more so than with John. But either way, I mean, what this I guess from my perspective as a fan, I mean that must have been a great gig for a very long time. I mean, Daryl's house, you met a ton of people. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I mean I could always sort of see your solo career just giving you that little
Hmm.
pull. So
Yeah.
why now? And what was the thought process leading up to that, if you don't mind sharing?
I don't know. This is a decision that has been in the making actually a long time. This was not just like a spur of the moment, oh, I think I should move on. The time is right. I've actually been thinking about it and trying to plan it out for quite some time. Like you were saying, you've seen me, work at my own career and keep my solo career going alongside theirs. Um, and when I say theirs is obviously Daryl Hall and John Oates, collectively. I don't honestly know what the status of Hall and Oates are now. They don't seem to be working at this time, so it's really just Daryl. So, but of course, it's was 18 years with Hall and Oates, which was amazing. Everything about it was great, but I've had my solo career, which has really been my focus for most of my career, and it just got to the point where there were a lot of things that were becoming challenging, and most of it was logistically. Being an artist, you have to plan ahead. There's just no way around that. When you're booking shows and you're planning a career and things you have to do, and even interviews and stuff, everything has to be planned out pretty far in advance. So that was becoming really challenging for a while. But that's the kind of gig, like you just said, it's an incredible gig for any musician to have. And it was very difficult to walk away from. Every year that I would think, oh, now is the year to do it, they'd be like, well, we're going to go out and do this massive tour with Train or Tears for Fears, and we're going to do all these incredible venues, and I would make it work for one more year. And of course, after a couple of years of joining Daryl and John, Daryl started the show, Live from Daryl's House, and that just opened up a whole nother world. And it was amazing. I was fortunate enough to do every episode up until just the past couple. So, but my career has sort of, I've been pushing it forward, but it's grown a little bit. So I feel like, I have a good head start on getting out there. And part of my reasoning for this whole decision too was not only to pursue my own career, which I am, and I have a lot of work and a lot of great offers happening right now, but it's to look and possibly work with other people. Last year was working a lot with Todd Rundgren, who I love dearly. I've been so blessed and fortunate enough to work with him so many times over the course of being with Hall and Oates. And it made me sort of realize that I want to experience other things too. I want to experience and look at maybe other artists and other bands to work with, as well as focusing on my own thing.
And you, from my perspective, maybe the last 10 years that I've known you,
Yeah.
one of the things that you've really concentrated on is relating to your audience on a personal level, like getting to know your fans and
Hmm.
being accessible and touring a little bit. So,
Yeah.
and I can imagine that if you're trying to build a solo career, and let's face it, neither one of us are young anymore.
Right.
You don't get the radio play. You don't necessarily get all that stuff. You gotta get word of mouth, and you got to get in
Yeah.
front of people, and you got to play shows. And it looks like your solo shows, your tours seem to be getting incrementally larger. And I assume there's a lot of word of
Exactly.
mouth.
Exactly. There's a bit of word of mouth, and like with any artist that's trying to branch out, it's exposure. It's increasing the awareness to people of what you do. So I've been doing that. It's fairly methodically, and it's getting to the point where, there's some bigger offers coming in. The level of shows that I'm doing is increasing, the quality of shows. So, I mean, for instance, I'm going to Decatur, Illinois in about 10 days to do a 1,000-seat theater on my own. So, that's where I'm headed, and it's a lot of work. And I've had to juggle the two worlds. Not that Hall and Oates or Daryl Hall on his own is that much work, but it's time consuming. And again, the scheduling became very challenging. I wasn't able to accept certain offers and shows because I wouldn't know what their schedule was or wouldn't get the information. So, and I get what goes into that, but it became challenging. So now I'm free to book ahead and it's great. And now I can just be Eliot Lewis, an artist. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
really
mean,
enjoying that.
it seemed like these Daryl Hall solo shows, they just sort of popped up. So I would
Yeah,
imagine and it was like an
yeah,
every other day thing because it looks like he was avoiding excessive travel, which is a good thing. But yeah, I can
yeah,
see that. I
yeah.
mean, it's I guess for a while that would have been the mothership. And if mama
hmm
calls you home, you gotta take that call, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, there's a lot of things I'll miss about it, especially the guys in the band. They're all great guys. I have so much fun with them, and that really, you know, that's hard to walk away from because it's such a great hang with them, and always look forward to being on the road with them. But we're gonna cross paths, and I'm sure I'll be playing with like Brian at some point. We're family.
I guess that leads nicely into the next question is, I
Yeah.
mean, we had the fan reactions, obviously, but like what were the reactions from fellow bandmates? I mean, maybe even, and like, I don't know, this may seem
Yeah.
like a weird question, but I think people will want to know this. Like, how do you do that? Like, what do you do? Call the guy up? Do you send in a little email, a 2 week notice? I mean, how do you quit Daryl Hall's band?
Oh God. Well, the route I took was through email, just because that's the relationship I had with Daryl for so many years, and yeah, um, I think they definitely expressed that they were sorry to see me go, but I think they all very much expected it. They could see, I mean, how many times we'd be out on tour and we'd have a night off and I'd be going out to doing my own show and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're crazy." But wow, we respect you. You're putting in the time and the effort to build this thing. So I think there's a little bit of respect there. And it's all good, man. It's all good. This is my calling. I never set out to be just I don't know, just a musician. I'm no virtuoso on any instrument. I think my strength lies in how I put things together and express my songs. So there wasn't a lot of room for me to do that in that world of Hall and Oates or Daryl. It wasn't really a creative outlet. It was a great, great outlet to be a musician in, but not really as an artist. So.
And the other thing that I'm guessing based on what I know and knowing
Mhm.
about you is you prefer to play guitar than
Oh
over
yeah,
keyboards, right? I mean,
absolutely.
did that come into play at all?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good point, and I'm happy to talk about that. Yeah, when I joined, it was really way back when when T-Bone was alive. Had called me that one day to join Daryl's solo band, solo tour, and like whatever it was, 2004. And I had been off the road a couple of years with Average White Band. I had left Average White Band, and I was ready to get back out on it. And T-Bone called, and I did the tour, and it went great because they were looking for like a utility guy to do some keys, some bass, some percussion, sing, maybe a little guitar. So I did a bunch of things on that tour. And then at the end of it, and Daryl asked me to join Hall and Oates proper, the position that was open was the keyboard position. And so, yeah, of course I took it. because I like playing keys, but I never considered it my main instrument. I never considered the instrument that I would sort of end up getting the most exposure on. You know, that was far from what I envisioned. I did play a lot of keys in the 80s, and I was really into the session world and, you know, sequencing and sampling and working for producers and stuff. But I never saw myself as being a real performing keyboard player. It just sort of happened that way because that was the position that was open. They had T-Bone, they had a guitar player, they had John, of course, and Daryl all played guitar. So yeah, that's how that happened. You know, it was great. I had a lot of, you know, there was a lot of variety in my life with that because I would play keys predominantly for them. I played a little bit of guitar here and there, but mostly keys. But then I'd go off in my own career and play guitar. So the variety is nice. But then again, you know, I was spending a lot of time some years being a keyboard player, and that's really not exactly what I was looking to do.
Yeah, because I mean, your solo material recorded and live. I mean, it's clear that you write stuff for, or maybe even with, guitar in mind.
Yeah.
I mean, your solo work is very guitar driven. It's very
Yeah.
riff heavy. It's
Yeah.
you know, it's very enjoyable stuff. So I mean, anybody out there seeing this interview, who's a Hall & Oates fan that hasn't heard your stuff, I mean,
Mhm.
by all means, go get it. You know, but
Thank you. Thanks, man.
so what would have been, now here we are, you're away from Daryl Hall and John Oates and everything. And I'm wondering, you know, what over the last 10 years and now looking ahead, I guess we'll do a little bit of going back in terms of your solo career. I mean, there's got to be challenges with distribution of the music, whether it be, you know, compact disc or getting it to all the different streaming services or everything like that. What was the learning curve with that? And are you at a point now where you feel more comfortable? And I believe you now have a record contract, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly from your social media posts.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I've been like a lot of artists, have been putting out stuff independently for years, be that full length CD or EP, or just singles. So, but about 5 years ago, a deal sort of approached me, a company who ended up being, it was a great situation, and they were distributed by Universal. So now this company is sort of has an offshoot, and they're still distributed by Universal, but it's a slightly different company. And the company is some people in Norwalk, Connecticut that I've done work with. They're like a production company. It's an amazing place called Factory Underground. And they're a bit of everything. They have sound stages, they have great state-of-the-art recording studios. They do video work. I've shot some of my videos there. But now this record company sort of morphed into this place. So with all the work that I've been doing there, they looked at what I was doing and want to proceed with a label deal. So, and they had some great suggestions. So I've put out a record pretty recently called Anything Is Possible. And obviously did it all myself like I do with most of my records. But they had a great suggestion. Why don't I add 2 cover songs to it? And I did. And I recorded a song I've been playing literally all my life, Pick Up the Pieces by the Average White Band. I did my own recorded version of it, which I had never done actually. And I picked a song that's been in my show. I pull out every now and again because I love it so much. One of my favorite songs by an artist, Gary Wright, that recorded Dreamweaver. So the song is called Love Is Alive. And it's one of my favorite songs. And I'm so happy they suggested me doing covers. They said, pick anything you're comfortable with. So I just thought that really hits the mark as far as a cover song that represents what I do musically. It's funky, but it's got an edge to it. And I'm actually getting back into my funkier side. I'm embracing like pretty much full steam my funkier side, you know, because soul music was a big part of what I did for a long time with Average White Band. It is part of my own thing anyway. So I'm sort of embracing that. And you'll actually hear some more keys in some of the music I'm doing now.
Yeah, I mean, Love Is Alive. Wow, what a great song!
Oh, it's such a great song.
I mean, you know,
yeah.
I don't know. I got to see Gary with Ringo's All-Star Band, and
nice.
And seeing that song live. I haven't heard you play it live, which I hopefully I will at some point, but it's
Yeah.
just, it's one of those weird songs that if you haven't heard it in a while and then you hear it again, you're like, wow, that's just
I
a
know.
great song.
It's a beautifully put together song. It's got an
Yeah.
incredible groove, and you know his thing was so unique too because back then when he came out, it was all keyboards, and
Yeah.
this was
Yeah.
before sequencing and sampling, and really probably just before drum machines. I mean, yeah, it was before drum machines. It was mid 70s, 75 or something like that. But he was one of the first artists that I ever discovered that was an all keyboard band. But he was very clever. He would come up with sounds that were like clavinet based that sounded like a guitar. So if you didn't really dissect it, you might not know that was all done with keyboards.
Yeah. And he had the little guitar and everything. I mean, he was
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
cool dude. And I think he was with Spooky Tooth before
I
he
think
went
so.
solo, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, and you've done some other, I mean, Ready for Love is a great Bad Company cover. I mean, you really do come from a place of kind of some unique song or styles that sort of merge together. As I think I've told you in the past,
Yeah.
some of your stuff almost reminds me of AC/DC at times. And I know
Yeah.
you were a Kiss fan growing up. So I
Oh
guess you're
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
used to that sort of riff heavy stuff. I always, I always, the song to me that I feel like always exemplifies you and your career is of course Crusade. Just a
Oh
great
yeah.
song. And
Oh, thank you.
it seems so autobiographical because it really, your career has been that. And now
Yeah.
you can really go off on the crusade and convert everybody. Right.
Well, yeah, at least I feel like I have to try, Tom. I feel like, we were saying none of us are getting any younger. And that if I was ever going to do this now, sooner than later would be the time. I still feel good physically and mentally, and I've sort of been preparing myself for the amount of work that's going to take to be an artist and the traveling and, physically the demands of that. So I'm really excited about what the future holds. And again, I want to mix it up and do a lot of different things now. So,
Yeah. And I think you touched on it earlier. Maybe the most important takeaway is the fact that just because you're putting more emphasis on the solo career doesn't mean you wouldn't wind up in somebody's band.
well,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But more than likely, I don't. I would if a situation came about, would probably be on guitar or something like that. Might not be on keys because I've played keys now for a long time. Want to get to what's a little bit closer to my vision and what feels comfortable for me. You know. But all I can say is too is, I mean, this past 18 years have been just unbelievable. I never thought it took me to places I never thought that I would go in a career. It took me to my all-time dream venue, playing Madison Square Garden several times and all over the world. So it was an incredible experience. But like all things, all things are going to come to an end, and I want to experience some other things why it makes sense, why the timing is right.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to try to say this diplomatically. It may not come across that way, but I would think that I mean, Daryl Hall solo or Hall and Oates. I mean, they're,
Hmm.
they're at a point where they are. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not really
Hmm.
recording new music. So you're probably not feeding that aspect of it. They're probably
Right.
playing a lot of venues that you've already played.
Yeah.
This last tour with Todd Rundgren must have been a nice piece for you and you had done the virtual tour, but
Awesome. Yeah. And
but
and
like you
I
said,
have to say I can't say enough about Todd. I mean, I love him. And maybe in some way playing with him so much last year gave me the inspiration just because he's such an incredible artist. He's so free to do whatever he wants and play by his own rules. And he really is in it for the music and the art of it. He doesn't care about anything, maybe to a fault, but
yep.
that's inspiring to be around for an artist. And so yeah, all things led to this for me, and I'm incredibly happy about it. But I'm also incredibly happy about the last 18 years. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, well, and again, they're all everything leads up, like you said, things happen for a reason, and you're kind of at a point. I mean, back to Todd, of course. I mean, Todd, I'm a huge Todd Rundgren fan, as you know, and
Hmm.
that's how I came to know you was through his
Hmm.
music. But in his case, he's really built this fan community,
Yeah, he
and
has.
I think I've seen you use some of the same techniques in terms of, again,
Hmm.
musically you don't necessarily have to be predictable, but if you let the fans feel like they're part of the process or part of the
Hmm.
team,
Hmm.
and you're genuine about it,
Mm.
that's going to work for you. And that seems to be working
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super, super grateful for anybody that is interested in what I'm doing. So, I do try and engage as much as I can. Now, from the outside, it probably looks to maybe some people that I've gone a bit quiet, but it's only because I've been working so much on
Yeah.
music that I don't have time sometimes to do all the social media stuff that I should be doing. But I'm building it. Being an artist, I've been doing it alone predominantly for so long. I'm starting to build a team. So that's another thing that it takes to reach a certain level is you can't do everything on your own. And I've been working hard doing that, but now I'm building a team finally.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be that's got to be kind of exciting too. I mean, it
Yeah.
and a little bit nerve wracking because you as is the case with any team, you have to worry about chemistry, and I mean,
Hmm.
from being in bands that
Yeah.
I've always heard the term, you got to look for a guy that's good on the bus, somebody that you get along with, and
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So I imagine now that you've handed over some aspects of your career, which I don't know if you're doing all the legwork, when do
Hmm.
you have time to do the music? So it is
Exactly.
important that you give some of that up, right?
That's been my challenge. That's been my challenge. And I'm putting so much into what I'm doing now musically. For instance, I'm doing an all new show. I've done a lot of different ways to present music in my show. I've done it solo with some backing tracks. I've played with a band. I do a small band with a drummer, possibly a singer sometimes, but I'm doing an all live looping show, which makes a lot of sense for me because I play 4 or 5 instruments. So I've been dabbling in the looping thing for about 4 years or so, but I had a vision in my head, and it took a long time to get to that. How I can create the sound of a band convincingly on my own, and it's a bit nerve wracking, but because there's some technology involved, but it's all live. I'm creating something from scratch in front of people, and it can change and it can morph into something else, and it keeps me on my toes, and it's very unpredictable and very spontaneous. So, but it takes a lot of work. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, I if I remember correctly, you were doing some of that with the web based stuff during the
Yeah,
pandemic. It's like
exactly.
it's very kind of
Yeah,
mad scientist type stuff, but
yeah,
it's if you do it right, it's still people say, oh, you have pre-recorded tracks, there's no authenticity, but I don't know. It's different with loops because again, you're recording the bits all at once and you're mixing
exactly.
them right on stage, and it's I
Exactly.
don't know, it's an interesting combination of things going on.
Yeah. KT Tunstall really brought it to people's attention, when she came out with Black Horse and Cherry Tree, how many of her years that was ago. But, there's some really great looping artists out there. It's a really interesting way to present music. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. I mean, look at Todd, one of his first performances on Midnight Special, he had a tape machine behind him.
Yep.
And, of course, it was all him playing that stuff. So there's so many different ways to present music. And I just want to explore a lot of different things at this point.
Well, I'm going to plant a seed for you. Okay. You
Okay.
don't have to take my suggestion because it's just me and we're friends. But when I was, uh, when I was younger, Bo Diddley used to come to town and he always
Hmm.
played with my friend's band. And I
Hmm.
guess the deal was, and I think Chuck Berry did the same thing for a while too, they would just pick a local band to back them
Oh,
up
right,
in each
right,
area.
right.
And it was so, I mean, the stories I heard from my buddy about, working with Bo Diddley, he'd be like, yeah, man, we'd just be on stage and he'd just kind of look at us and go, hey guys, this is an E, and then we'd have to go along for the ride. And it kind of worked, it was very interesting. And nobody really does that anymore. It's
Well,
gotta be terrifying, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. But having said that, it is a really unique way to do things. But those guys were playing very, very simplistic music. And of course, most people at that point would have heard Chuck Berry on the radio and heard these songs that have been around for decades, and they're very simple, sort of blues-based rock. So, not a lot of like Todd wouldn't go out and just pick up musicians on the spot that he's never played with before, because his music is very involved, or a lot of it is, and it gets quite deep. So that was good for some artists, but it does keep it interesting.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in your case, I would assume, and I've heard of this stuff happening, and I bet you're one of these guys too, because I was actually just interviewed Michelle Rundgren for the Todd Stock event that's coming up, and she was talking about Bruce McDaniel, and you've worked with Bruce.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And she said that Bruce showed up at a Daryl Hall gig because your other guitarist was sick or something like that, and he just sort of
right,
just filled in. And there's guys like Chasm Sultan just got picked up for some Cyndi Lauper gigs, and he just sort of shows up and plays. And it always fascinates me how guys like you, or even the Daryl's House thing, where it's like, oh, got a stack of songs, and everybody shows up in the room, and you're good to go. If you do your homework,
well, yeah, you have to.
It's pretty cool.
You have to be somewhat prepared, and all the years that we've spent on our instruments playing, hopefully we can hear something and put it together fairly quickly. But yeah, that just comes with practice, like anything. If it's what you do for a living, hopefully you get relatively good at it.
Well, you've always been great at that. I mean, I told you the last time I interviewed you. It just blows my mind that you guys can all show up in a room for the first time together and just and sound like you've been playing together for years. But I mean, was there ever a situation where you were a little nervous, like somebody came in and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can pull this off?
Oh my God, yeah. Let's see, I'll give you an example. Yeah, there's stuff like, especially being the keyboard player for Daryl and John. Again, I had played keyboards, but not to the level of the keyboard players that were in Hall & Oates. There was big shoes to fill, and so I really had to shed and up my game. And T-Bone was very, very supportive. He was like, Eliot, I know you can do this. I believe in you. But there were some moments early on where I was like, oh my God. There was one girl I'm not going to be able to remember her name, but we were out in LA doing a Christmas show. It was the Hall & Oates Christmas show. And we got offered to do this performance, and I think she was an American Idol winner. And if I heard the name, I would recognize it. But they offered Hall & Oates to come do this thing at the Grove in LA with this singer. And it was doing a Christmas song. It was doing like 3 songs, and it was doing a David Foster, if you know who David Foster is, the producer, doing one of his arrangements that was so deep and complex. And I literally had one night to learn it. And it was so beyond what I had ever played before, the kind of chords and the very, very richly harmonic stuff that I just hadn't played. And so that was really nerve-wracking because it was live on TV. That's one example. And then the Doors show, working with Robbie Krieger and Ray Manzarek on Daryl's show, on Live from Daryl's House. That was one situation early on in the show where that was going to be the first episode I didn't play on, because they were going to go to LA and do the Doors. And they didn't need me. They said, oh, Ray Manzarek is going to probably play keyboard bass like he did in the Doors, so we're just not going to need you. And I was like, great, no worries, have a great show. And the night before they were going to tape this episode, T-Bone called me, and I'm in my home studio in Connecticut, and he said, El, we messed up. We need you. Can you learn 7 Door songs on the bass and get on the 6 a.m.? This is 8 o'clock at night. Learn 7 Door songs, get on the 6 a.m. to be in LA for noon. And I did. Not that the Door songs are that complex, but, to pick up an instrument that is not your first instrument, basically you have to stay up all night with a lot of coffee. But those things have happened, especially guys like Chasm. You have to just be prepared and go with the flow. Do your best.
Yeah, I Chasm's. I mean, he's such a great guy, and a solo artist in his own right too. I mean, you
He
guys have
is.
done some shows together, and maybe you'll have some opportunities to
Yeah,
work together.
I would absolutely love to work with Chasm. We did at least one show together, and then, of course, the virtual shows. And he's a monster, man. He's a giant. He's a master musician. He's a great, great guy. And yeah, yeah. I hope we cross paths again.
Yeah, I get there's times I literally just get sucked into his bass playing because it's like sometimes the bass is sometimes you think of like John Entwistle or Chris Squire or all those
Yeah.
big sounding guys, but man, you listen to Chasm and he reminds me of like Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead, this sort of unsung hero that you don't really notice him until he's gone.
He knows how to do everything. He's so adept at so many different styles, and he's done so much that he's just so in it. And honestly, when I did the virtual shows, when that started with Todd in Chicago, I went to Chasm and I said, I have to tell you something. I said, this is the first time that I have felt like I've played with a musician that reminded me of T-Bone, of his caliber. Wow. And it's the highest compliment I could pay any musician, because T-Bone was like that. He was a giant master musician who could fit into anything. And Chasm gave me that feeling, and I just thought, wow, this is comforting, and I wanted to let him know. And he's great. He's the real deal.
Yeah, and it's man, I've lost friends too, and I can always tell when you bring up T-Bone that was a huge loss for you. And I think in some ways, if he was still alive, you may or may not have stayed in the band. Although I feel like he would have been the first one to go, "Wow, do what you gotta do, man." Because I want you to succeed. I mean, he's a guy I wish that I had a chance to interview, or wish I had a chance to know. And as I told you, that Paul Carrick's Groove Approved record is one of my favorite records of all time, and he did such an amazing job producing it. He just has a
Paul Carrick.
He just had a sense of how to get such a great performance out of Paul and whatnot. Well, we're at about 30 minutes, so let's wrap it up. And I think we should make a pact to check in at least 6 months and see how things are going, because this is all still new in the sense that not new that you're a new solo artist, but it's new that you've taken the step away. In terms of your solo shows, you've given us a sense of where you're at with the loops and everything. And I'm gonna tell you a little personal thing. I've always found it difficult if I have to prepare for something. Like I've just started doing some stand-up comedy, and again, after stepping away from it for a few years, that rehearsing, if I don't have anybody else to push me, is always a little bit difficult. Do you? Is it a struggle to prepare yourself for your solo shows because it's just you, and the drummer can't yell at you for being out of time or whatever? Or is it just very natural for you to be able to kind of prep on your own?
It's somewhat natural now. I have to say, the first time I ever performed solo was pretty frightening, even though I had played in front of 50,000 people in the Average White Band, for instance. It's a whole different feeling. It's a completely different feeling, knowing that there's nobody else for people to focus on, that all eyes are likely going to be on you when you're doing this. So it's a little nerve-wracking, but then again, you understand that if you've done stand-up comedy, you're up there alone and people are focused on you. So I guess because of the experiences I've had, and probably a lot of that has to do with the Hall & Oates experience and Daryl's show, I've become comfortable with it. I try not to think about it or overanalyze it now. I just, which takes a lot, but just get up there and just really be in the moment, be into the music, be focused on that. And once you're in that space, then it becomes natural to connect with people. But the show I'm doing is a little bit more involved. It's a little bit more mental gymnastics too. So that's why I'm spending the extra time, practicing and performing it. So because I have this vision in my head, I'm really trying to get to that point. Some days I get to that point and I'm going, wow, this sounds really good. And there's the other days that I'm being like, oh, what am I doing? But we keep pushing ahead until we get the result that we're looking for, Yeah.
Well, I have the utmost of confidence in you. I'm a fan, as well, a fan of your music, and fan of you as a person. I love how you interact with the fans on social media, and anybody out there watching this. I mean, you're very approachable. There's none of that rock star, like, oh, look at me, I'm Eliot Lewis, which is refreshing. So I think that this is also going to give you a chance, which makes me happy, to put some hands on your hand, like just to shake some hands and say thank you in person. And I imagine, as much as the performing is great, you got to love that aspect of it too, based on your personality.
Absolutely. All I can say is I work hard, but I'm a lucky guy. I've done what I love to do all of my life. And, when I put out that social media post a week ago, whatever it was, I knew I was going to get a little bit of support and probably get some question marks and stuff, but the support, the amount of supportive comments were really overwhelming. I had no idea that people were looking or following that closely. So it was very, I was very happy about that. Very flattered.
I can imagine that last bit where you had to press post must have been like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the truth be told, I had already left a couple of months. It wasn't, and I was just waiting for the right time, really. But people were going, well, wait a minute. I was getting hit up every day, literally, like, wait a minute. Daryl has got this, 2-week tour here, over here, but you've got dates over here. Like, what's going on? And I was like, let me just address this and make it clear. Yeah. And clarify what's going on. So that's what happened.
Well, I'm happy for you. I said it's obviously a decision that's a good one for you at this time, and I'm excited to see where things. I mean, you do need to get a little bit closer to the Buffalo area, because
I'm working on that.
I don't travel like I used to, for God's sake.
I have a couple of places that we're looking at with my agency. So
okay, well, we'll if you need any input on those venues, if they're good to play, and I'm gonna help you promote it. We'll do a news story and all that kind of good stuff. And
I'll hit you up. Okay.
Yeah. And Mrs. Jennings will be excited too. She's a fan as well. I think it's because you're a good-looking guy. I don't know, and she likes your music too. But All right. Well, Eliot, thank you so much. How about some just quick before obviously we go? Anything I know you got a new album out.
Yeah.
Tell people about your website, where they can find tour dates and social media and all that stuff, and then we'll wrap it up. Oh yeah,
the usual suspects.
Usual.
Facebook, Instagram. The website is eliotlewis.com. And the new record is Anything Is Possible. I have a whole new year's worth of merch ordered and ready to go for all the dates this year. So, but there's going to be a lot of cool stuff too with this relationship with this company. There'll be a lot of, video stuff and unusual stuff, maybe some podcasts, a bunch of stuff. I want to mix it up this year. So
awesome, fantastic. All right. Well, until next time, this is Thom Jennings, tuning in with Thom. Eliot, thank you so much. I will definitely see you on the road in the very near future.
Love you, bro. See you soon.
Yep, love you too, man.
All right.
Bye. Okay.